You're listening to Radio Chatskill. I'm Tim Bruno. Erin Shearer has the enviable task of eating upstate. It's her segment where she visits restaurants and food establishments in our region. Today, she's in Delaware County at the Brushland Eating House, run by husband and wife team Sohail and Sarah Zandi. They conceived of Brushland in 2014 with a, quote, serious hankering for hosting, a deep desire to feed our community, and a recipe for a mean schnitzel.
So I just for 2 minutes to talk about celebration and ceremony. It's words that are sort of thrown around, and we take them for granted a little bit. Unfortunately, we only really celebrate or have ceremonies when really big things happen. Someone passes away and you think about all the great life they lived, or someone gives birth and you think that what it's the start to a new life. But tonight we have some birthdays here and we should celebrate those people. We have some anniversaries here, we should celebrate those people. We should celebrate that it's Saturday night and you're out to dinner in a room full of other people, right? Yeah. It's important. It's important. If you don't celebrate it, the ceremonial stuff becomes mundane very, very quickly. So this is what this moment's for. Take it in, remember. Every day we show up here at work, we're celebrating. We're celebrating the fact that we get to be in a space and provide food for people that appreciate it and who are enthusiastic about it and who give a about it, It's an honor to do it. I don't have really better words than that. And so I appreciate you guys being here, and I just hope everyone has a good time. We just, raise a glass to each other, to people celebrating something, to the room celebrating. So just knock glasses with whoever you want and have a good time. Thanks so much. Thank you guys.
What you just heard was Sohail Zandi toasting the crowd at Brushland Eating House on a balmy Saturday night last October. Brushland Eating House, located in Bovina Center in Delaware County, serves prefix meals with vegetables from their own garden, as well as ones provided by other local farmers. Like a lot of dining establishments, their operations were upended by COVID, but they used the opportunity to revamp their operations. They also own a couple of adjacent Airbnbs, and they're the subject of today's Eating Upstate. Sohail and Sarah Zandi first met working at sister restaurants in Carroll Gardens, Brooklyn in 2012. Shortly thereafter, Sohail relocated to Martha's Vineyard, where he worked on a cheese farm, and Sarah soon followed. Martha's Vineyard left them yearning for a slower pace of life, but they wanted to be closer to their family. Inspired by a couple of trips they had made early in their relationship, they decided to settle in the town of Bovina. In order to live in the Catskills full-time, however, they would need to find work. So they decided to open their own restaurant. Here's Sohail.
I never imagined we'd own a restaurant, but after living in Martha's Vineyard, we knew we wanted to move back to live in the Catskills for no real reasoning other than we'd been in there a couple of times and we're charmed by it, and it felt close enough to New York City, and it felt like it was accessible in terms of, the pricing of buildings and just general cost of living. So just tried to find a way to make that happen. How are we going to be able to live there? It was really the number one goal. I was working on a farm in Martha's Vineyard making cheese. And so that was kind of the mindset, was buy a piece of property and maybe have a small farm of some sort. And then I wisened up to the fact that wasn't really a great way to make money. But eventually the idea was to have the farm, then maybe build a restaurant on the farm later on. So I searched long and hard for a farmhouse with some property. And we stumbled upon the restaurant building, and it sort of dawned on me that the best way to do it, to get to the ultimate goal of living in Bovina or the Catskills in general, was to buy the restaurant building, do the restaurant first, and then later on build out a garden or farm or whatever other things we were still interested in after that.
Brushland Eating House first opened in 2014. The following year, eater critic Robert Sietsema crowned Brushland Eating House, quote, the Hickster Restaurant of the Year, and the year after that, Condé Nast Traveler named Brushland Eating House one of the 207 best restaurants in the world.
It was just the affirmation, I think, that we were doing, because when we set out with, starting a restaurant in a small town in upstate New York, I don't think there was a lot of it seems like a very crazy idea. Even our, closest friends, there was a lot of skepticism, I would say, about coming, not outwardly, but, you can feel it from your loved ones and, the people who are closest to you, they'll smile and nod and say, that sounds like a great idea, but they sort of do it through, they're gritting their teeth a little bit. So those things were just affirmation to us, and they were kind of just a little bit of wind in our sails to keep going.
Despite the acclaim, by 2020, they found themselves burning the candle at both ends. Then COVID shut everything down. For many restaurateurs, COVID found them in the pit of despair. But Sohail and Sarah found an opportunity to reinvent themselves. They had other factors to consider as well. That August, they welcomed their firstborn daughter. Throughout the pandemic, they offered barbecue on Thursday nights and something they called pod dining, private dining in a group setting.
I think they've been shifting so much in the last couple of years. So we always just try and stay flexible and offer kind of what makes sense for us. At that time, people had spent that whole summer sort of doing to-go food and eating outside, and the weather changed. And we were at a point where I don't remember if there was, government rules or if these are like just weight of the world rules, but we weren't ready to invite people back into the restaurant kind of as like a mixed group. So what we did was saying basically you could privately rent the restaurant. It was a private rental of the restaurant space for the evening. And so it could be anywhere from 2 people to who would come and eat at the restaurant just by themselves, up to a party of 15 or 20 or whatever you were comfortable with. Usually it was smaller numbers because the people who were taking advantage of, that experience were people that weren't comfortable eating with other people. And that's why they wanted to come, but they wanted to go out and eat. So it's pretty cool because we hosted a lot of people who would come in and say, this is my first time eating in a restaurant in X amount of time, like a year or over a year. And so the majority of the pod dining was done. So the way it worked was that I could basically do it all by myself, is that I could cook the food and host the people. So we wouldn't have to expose, the patrons to that many staff members. It was just literally me and them in a space. So it was a pretty intimate experience, and it was, I think, a lot of fun for a lot of people, and it kept me busy because it was a lot of work for one person. But yeah, that's what we did until kind of maybe around this time last year.
In its early days, Brushland had been open 5 nights a week. Previous owners who had restaurants in the area operated their restaurants as passion projects, and at times would not open for the day simply because the owners didn't feel like showing up. Sohail and Sarah wanted to prove to the community that they were here to stay, and in order to do that, they kept it open 5 nights a week. When dining restrictions loosened up, they made the decision to cut down their operations from 5 nights a week to 2, and shifted from a walk-in restaurant with a regular menu to a reservation-only prix-fixe operation. In June of 2021, they resumed regular operations.
Well, after having some time off or away from regular restaurant service, I'd say that we kind of wanted to look at the landscape of what we were doing, and we wanted to focus on the things that we really enjoyed about what we were doing, about having a restaurant, about feeding people, hosting people, and we wanted to focus on those things, and we wanted to sort of figure out a way to eliminate the things that we didn't like about having a restaurant, just the general stress of it and the push it to the limit kind of attitude that happens, every day. And it would seem like a really obvious time to kind of shift. And I think the world was shifting, and I think that, staffing is limited. And so everything kind of just lined up to the fact that, we should sort of scale back and do something that's like more focused on the experience and not so much focused on trying to squeeze every dollar and cent out of the business. And I kind of use this analogy a lot. Like, I think when you start a business, I think that you count every penny. And I think that's what makes a great business, is that people care about making money. I think if you don't care about like maximizing in the beginning, then it's just not going to be successful.
Each night opens with a free cocktail and a toast. Bovina is a dry community, meaning that it's illegal to buy or serve alcohol, but thanks to an abandoned hotel development in the 1990s, hotels and inns are permitted to serve alcohol. The Airbnbs they own qualify them as one such establishment. Right out there, am I correct about that?
Yeah, exactly.
So do you have a garden out there? Is that?
There's a garden, yeah, that I've had for the last 5 years or so.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. And we get a lot of herbs and stuff like that from that garden. Mostly herbs and smaller things. Then we get a lot of larger quantities of produce from local farms.
Brushland tries to rotate their meat sources. They get their beef from Bramley Mountain Farm, also in Bovina Center, as well as Fieldstone Farm in Richfield Springs near Cooperstown. Chicken comes from Grenon Farms in Maridale, as well as Black Willow Pond Farm in Cobleskill, where they also source their pork. Lamb comes from Evans & Evans Farms in nearby Andes. In addition to their own garden, they get their vegetables and other produce from Berrybrook Farm in Hamden, Rock Royal Farm in Walton, and Starroot Farm located in Charlottesville in Schoharie County.
The whole animals are kind of like a quarter cow or a half a pig. And so we're really dependent on slaughter schedules with those things. So we kind of are, it's kind of maybe the most stressful thing about the job is juggling where those proteins are coming from on a week-to-week basis. And then we're blessed to have a couple of really great vegetable farms in the area that are getting better every year. That's something they're on the the same timeline as the restaurant, where those things didn't exist 10 years ago, but they sort of have matured over the last 10 years. And we have some really great local vegetable produce that comes to us from 3 or 4 really great farms. And there's mushroom people, and there's, we can't complain about produce anymore, except for in the winter when there is none.
They utilize the animal from nose to tail, and on the night that I visited, they were working their way through a pig. Oh, nice.
It's a big week, so we got a whole pig in on Wednesday. And, we just sort of cook the pig the week.
So you got a pig in on Wednesday, and now you're in the process of making... there we go.
That's the shoulder.
Yeah, there we go.
There you go. Now you're in. We go through it, and basically we'll make the rest of it into sort of preserved charcuterie or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's nice. It's been really good. This here is the sort of getting into because not everyone eats pork and some people don't eat meat, and so all that. So it's a lot of organizing, getting organized in our brains, sort of, right? Figuring out who's going to get what. That's the difficult part.
Sohail considers the transition to be a resounding success. All their old regular and semi-regular customers enjoy the new format, and he describes them as being over the moon. Here's Sohail himself with the final word.
I think that we're just going to try and keep getting better at what we're doing, and to just not be satisfied with the experience, and keep thinking of ways to make it better. We don't think that far into the future. It's one of the things that I think is important to us, is to be able to look at what's directly in front of us and to be able to adapt to it. So I think just our ultimate goal for this year is to keep doing what we're doing, make ourselves available to experiences. I think that's something that kind of the new format does, is gives us a little bit of flexibility to do more things outside of the restaurant space. And then, just work on being better at all the small things.
Brushland Eating House is located at 1927 County Highway 6 in Bovina Center. I'm Erin Shear. Eating Upstate is a production of WJFF Radio Catskill.
And we'll take a short break, and when we come back, the connection between Radio City Rockette and the health and wellness industry. This is Radio Chatskill.